Hey everyone, Andrew back again and welcome to another video, and today we're going to talk a little bit about VHS. So I've pulled out my VHS player and some of my pretty small VHS tape collection so you guys have something to look at while I'm talking in the background. Now the reason why I wanted to do this video is I've been really looking at my collection over the past couple of months and sort of evaluating where I'm at in terms of being a movie collector. As a lot of you guys can tell from my uploads, the amount of stuff that I'm picking up lately has been significantly smaller than it has done a few years ago. And the reason for that is I'm basically at a point with my collecting where I'm pretty much happy with the amount of films that I own. I feel that I've sort of pretty much got most of the movies that I want and have the ability to watch pretty much all my favourite movies. So I don't really feel the need to buy a lot anymore. Obviously when new movies come out or older movies get upgraded to Blu-ray, then I'll be purchasing those. But for the most part I'm really happy with where my collecting is, and it really sort of made me think back to when movies were pretty new to me and I was really just getting into movies. And this is it, guys. The VHS era shaped me into the movie lover and collector that I am today. So yeah, I felt like making this video, so hopefully you guys enjoy it and find it a little bit interesting. And it'll be a nice trip down memory lane, not only for me, but hopefully for some of you guys too that are pretty familiar with this format. So I was a late 80s, early 90s kid, so obviously back then VHS was the main format, and I used to rent movies out all the time. I lived in a fairly large city and there were a bunch of rental stores. Pretty much every suburb had at least one or two rental stores, and I can remember pestering my parents to take me to a bunch of different ones that we never normally went to. I think I had maybe a couple of local ones in my area where I lived, but once I'd sort of got done with those, I wanted to go elsewhere. And the best thing about that was a lot of the stores had a different bunch of movies, which was great. So I wasn't just renting the same sort of tapes over and over. I'd go to a bunch of different stores, some small stores, some really big stores. So the variety was definitely there. And yeah, absolutely loved it. Most stores had pretty good deals on weekly tapes, like you'd rent 5 weekly tapes for $10 or $7, something like that. So pretty much every week without fail I'd be renting a bunch of tapes and absolutely loved it. I definitely miss those times. I think we're fairly spoilt now as movie viewers and collectors, because everything's sort of just handed to us. With the internet, you can pretty much find out basically every single thing about a movie. If you look into it enough, there's online reviews. YouTube's a prime example of this, with unboxing videos, collection overviews, update videos. People are constantly throwing their opinions out on movies, so it's kind of hard to not really know anything about a movie that you're interested in. But back when I was renting VHS, all you'd basically have was what the cover art looked like and the basic synopsis on the back. And unless someone that you knew had already watched the movie, that's all you really had to go on for the film. There was not really such a thing as big reviews back then, so you pretty much had to take pot luck. And because most of the movies were absolutely amazing back then, 9 times out of 10 you'd be renting awesome movies anyway, so it didn't really matter. But I definitely feel some of that magic has been lost with technology, and it is kind of a shame, because I loved discovering movies for the first time that have now become my favourite movies of all time, and that's something that I don't really get anymore. But I guess that's just part of the course, and it's inevitable really. But yeah, that's definitely something that I really miss from back then. A couple of really fond memories I can remember from the VHS days was when I was about 10 years old, I was allowed to rent horror movies for the first time. Now, there were some restrictions that my parents put on horror movies. They weren't allowed to be too full on, and I can remember being attracted to one specific horror cover in my local store's horror section, and I've even got it displayed right here, and that of course is Child's Play 2. This is the horror cover that I can remember noticing right off the bat, and it still remained one of my all-time favourite horror covers even today. Now, Child's Play 2 obviously being the sequel, I didn't end up renting it first. They also had Child's Play, so I rented that. Absolutely loved it. That was the very first horror movie that I ever saw, and then I think the next day I went back and picked up Child's Play 2 and loved that also. It's actually my favourite within the franchise. So yeah, that was a great memory. And then just from then, I eventually rented more and more horror movies, and then sort of as I got older, I was pretty much allowed to rent whatever I wanted. So yeah, that's where my horror addiction started. And I can also really vividly remember a time when I rented the Goonies. Now, the Goonies is my favourite movie of all time, and I have no idea why I just didn't purchase a copy for myself of it, because I would constantly rent it all the time. My two local stores always had copies in, which was great, and I can actually remember one time that I watched it so much during the course of a weekend that I actually ended up not only breaking the tape but also the VHS player. So what happened sometimes was the actual film tape inside the VHS cassette would sometimes come out, and it would get caught in the heads of the VHS player. And that happened with the Goonies, so the only way we could really get the tape out was we had to yank it out and then cut the actual film tape. So that obviously destroyed the tape, and we had to pay a fine at the shop. And then we also had to get the VHS player repaired as well, which was probably a costly thing back then. So yeah, it would have been a lot easier and probably cheaper if I just bought a new copy of the Goonies rather than renting a old VHS tape. But yeah, they're just a couple of many memories that I remember when I used to rent VHS. I haven't rented a movie in ages. I've moved over to Australia. I'm from New Zealand originally, by the way. And yeah, since then I've moved over to Australia, and the town I'm in now only has one rental store, and it's pretty basic. Rental stores, they're still around, but they're slowly disappearing. And I can sort of see why, because movies are so cheap and easy just to purchase now, not only in store but online. So there's no real need to rent movies, I don't think, which is a shame, but that's just how things are. So yeah, I do miss the video rental store. Often if I'm away on holiday or travelling anywhere and I see a rental store, I do pop in and have a quick look, and if they have stuff for sale, I try and buy something just to support the business, you know. But yeah, I have great memories of renting. It'll never leave me because, as I said earlier, this is pretty much where it all began for me in terms of a movie lover and a collector. Before I go though, I'm wanting to show you a few quick little basic photos of my favourite video store of all time, which was Alice Video, or Alice in Videoland. I have, obviously living in Australia now, I haven't been in the store for years, but I have heard they're still open, and they've also opened a movie theatre or cinema behind the shop, which is awesome. So when and if I ever get back to Christchurch at some point, I'll definitely be visiting there. They were the best store. They had the best range of rare and obscure films. They had a really good New Zealand and Australian section. And the cool thing about the store was it was really decked out like an old school movie theatre. So as you can see from this photo, they have like a red carpet leading up to the counter, which looks like a movie theatre counter, and all their sections were sort of divided into like mini rooms with the movie shelves. So you'd have like horror, comedy, action, sci-fi, all that. They'd be sectioned off into their particular genres, and they'd done up the walls and like hung things off the roofs. So in the horror section, for example, there'd be like creatures hanging from the ceiling, cool paint around the wall, and like a whole lot of horror posters. And that was the same for each genre section, which was awesome. They definitely went all out with that. So yeah, massive props to Alice in Videoland, best rental store ever. Anyway guys, that pretty much does it for this video. Let me know what you think of this topic in the comment section below. If you feel like doing a video response, going through some of your VHS memories, that'd be awesome. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and thank you for watching.